Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. Today's clip is with the great Marshall Grant. This is part one of a two-part interview we did with Marshall at the iconic Sun Studios in Memphis. During this interview, Marshall shows how they set up in the studio, how they stumbled into that iconic sound that they had that was known worldwide. Hope you enjoy it, and if you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Hope you enjoy it. Part one, Marshall Grant.
Hello, I'm Marshall Grant. I want to tell you how it all started. First of all, I'd like to start with Marion Keister. She was the grand lady here. And through her, you had to come through her to get to Sam Phillips or even get any further than where we're at here in the lobby of Sun Records on into the studio. She was a lot of the brains behind the whole thing. And so when we first came in here, we had to go to Marion to get permission to see Sam, which is all right. We didn't do that, mind that at all. So through Marion, we got to see Sam Phillips. After visiting the studio several times to see Sam, we finally talked him into an audition. And at this time we were doing all gospel stuff. And so when we finally got an audition, the first song that we ever sang was a song called I Was There When It Happened. And so I guess I ought to know. Here's John's microphone. And here's the amplifier that Luther, he did not play through this amplifier, but this was the way that it was set up. This is the microphone for Luther and I. And this is the way Sam would get his mix. We were going to do, I was there when it happened, so I guess I ought to know what John and I sang harmony on that. So a non-directional microphone here, and John sings here, and I'm here, and Luther is over there. So we play a little bit for Sam. We just play a little bit for him, like that. And then when we start singing, I would simply move over to here. I was there when it happened. And John would be right here. And the way we got our mix here, Sam was in the studio back here. And we'd play a little bit for him. And then he would come out and say, Marshall, move in just a little bit. And I'd move in a little bit. He said, now let me listen to that. He'd go back in there, we'd play a little bit more. I played the old slap on the bass, like that. So Sam come out here, and he said, guys, he said, there's something that's really squirrely about you guys. He said, if you're really, really different. He said, I can't put my fingers on it. But he said, I'll tell you, we can't sell gospel music. He said, I've tried it before, it just don't work. If you come up with something original, come back and see me, and we'll rehearse. We'll record it, see what it sounds like. And so John had written a poem. That poem was called Cry, Cry, Cry. And so we came back, and we recorded Hey Porter and Cry, 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 and which was the beginning of our career. We recorded it, and wasn't very long until it was out. And that song, Cry, 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 got to about number 14 in the nation. And so we were off to the next step. I'm going to tell you about after we recorded Hey Porter and Cry, Cry, Cry. I worked at 309 Union. We're going to go down there a little bit later at Automobile Sales Company. And I was on the way to work one morning. And Sleepy-Eyed John, who was a disc jockey here in town, he said, say. You know, Sleepy had his own style. Said, Sam brought me up a new record yesterday. Said, I like these boys. And he said, I'm going to play it and see what you guys out there think about it. He said, I like these guys. I hadn't heard the record all the way through yet, but we're going to play it. So he said, they call themselves Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two. And I was just one block from Sun going west. I was one block. And when he said that, I pulled over to the side of the road here on Union Avenue. And I sat there and I listened to Hey Porter. And our ambition has been fulfilled as far as I was concerned right now, because really and truly when we first started, our ambition was to hear ourselves on the radio. And I'd heard it. Now I'm feeling, and I was so nervous. And I literally sat there on the side of the road for at least 5 minutes, and just sort of tried to sort this whole thing out. But I had heard ourselves on the radio, and so I went on to work, this is 678. I went down to 309. I pulled into the showroom, and the mechanics met me at the door and everything. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? And I said, yes, I did. I rushed to the phone. No cell phone in those days at the service desk, and I called John. I said, John, you're not going to believe this, but Sleepy-Eyed John played Hey Porter a while ago, and he said, you have got to be kidding me. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not kidding you. And Luther hadn't come in the building yet. And so I said, he played it. He played it, and not only, he said, I think you're going to hear a lot of these boys. He said, they're different. They've got a style all their own. And so and he was just shouting, we were so happy. And then when Luther came in, and Luther and I worked at the same building, I told him about it, and now we all three knew about it. And before the day was gone, I heard it 3 more times. So, I didn't know what was going on here, but I was very, very proud. But that's what happened on our first record. And we're sort of off and running here now. I want to tell you a little story about this picture here that I'm sure that some of you have heard about the truth about this picture, but I want to tell you what happened one day. John and his first wife Vivian were driving by here, and Vivian was pregnant with Roseanne Cash, as a matter of fact. And John was taking her to the hospital, to her doctor up here further uptown. They turned the corner off of Union onto Marshall and went toward the hospital, and he turned his head and looked inside, and he saw some people here. He didn't know who those people were, but he just kept on going. And he got up there and found out that the doctor was going to be an hour or so late. And so he turned to Vivian and said, do you mind, honey, if I go back down to Sun a little bit? Said, there's some people down there, and I'd like to go down and spend a little time, if you don't mind, since the doctor's going to be an hour and a half late. She said, sure, that's fine. So he came back. And when he came back, Jerry Lee, Carl, and Elvis was here. He didn't know that when he passed. So Sam got excited. And the Commercial Appeal newspaper is just down the street, about 3 blocks. And he called his photographer down there and told him to get up here right away. He had a picture he wanted him to snap. So they sat down at the piano, and Elvis played. I was not here, but they sat down at the piano, and so they started humming some songs and everything. Well, they took the picture, this picture, and then John's time sort of ran out, and he had to go back to Vivian and to pick her up because he didn't want to leave her there waiting, so he was here the better part of that hour. And then, after he left, they did the song, $1 Million Quartet. However, John wasn't here to record it with them. And but they just called it the $1 Million Quartet because they had $1 million picture here. I mean, that's all there was to it. But as time went on, you could ask John, why couldn't you hear him on there? And he would always answer you, but he didn't mean to be untruthful about it, but he didn't want to tell anybody that he wasn't on it. So he just answered in his own way, in his own time, but he literally is not on that song that they recorded. He was just going to pick up his wife. So that, I wouldn't tell that story if it wasn't true. But it just, the world needs to know. But it don't take anything away from what they sang or what they did. The picture tells it all. And as time went along, those 4 people along right there, along with Luther and myself and all of the band members, we came so close because we worked so much together out on the road, all of us, for 2 or 3 years. And great people, great people. That's how it happened.
When did you first meet Elvis? Did you meet him here in this building?
Okay. As time went along, Bob Neal, the late Bob Neal, a disc jockey on WMC, and Sam Phillips set up a booking agent called Stars Incorporated at 1616 Sturk Building here in Memphis. And all Bob did was book Sun recording artists. You had that picture and Roy Orbison and others, and that's all he booked. Well, that put us all working together an awful lot. Not necessarily all of us on the same show, but we'd go out with Elvis, and then I'd go out with Jerry Lee and Carl, or maybe on some big venues we'd all play together. And we had such great times that I'll never forget them. They're just embedded in your mind, and they run forever. But we just did all sorts of foolish things. We weren't foolish at that time. We were just having fun. They were sort of foolish, some of the things we did in those days. But great shows. And as we played with Elvis, when we all first started, we were sort of on the same level. We had a record out, and that's about it. Elvis had the first one, so he was a little ahead of us. But every night, you could see this group of people grow, and especially Elvis. Elvis' career grew. Some artists' career grew by year. His grew by hour. If you play Abilene tonight, you better get ready for San Antonio, because it's going to be much bigger. And we worked a lot out in there. Every day it got bigger and bigger, but so did the show. And by the time that some of us signed with other labels or whatever happened in our careers, and our careers separated, then everybody's career just seemed to explode. Of course, Elvis was the leader of the pack, but I can tell you, Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two wasn't very, very far behind. But those days are so embedded in my mind that it's just incredible. But I wouldn't take nothing for living through it.